Hi, hope you're doing really well. Dan from onlinebasscourses.com. Now, that's a blog that I've had running for nearly 3 years now. And if you go to that site, I'll put a link in the description below. You can get this 29-page free ebook that I've got that's got 12 video lessons that go with it. I'm really proud of this. I think it's a really good resource, totally for free. And it occurred to me that I haven't really done a video showing people what's in it, really. So it's kind of, what does it say on the front? Scales, modes, triads, chords, arpeggios, harmonics, intervals, exercises, practice tips, a load of really cool stuff. So in this video, I'm just going to go through this, really sort of speed through. There are lessons on this where there's QR code that you can just scan and it'll take you to the relevant lesson. There's 12 of them, I think. But so we got the contents here, and we start off with 1 finger per fret exercises. So if you're a beginner, this is a good way of coordinating the left and the right hands. 1 finger per fret just means where, if you say put your finger on the third fret of the G string with your first finger, you line up your second finger on the next fret, that's the 4th fret, your third finger on the 5th fret, and your little finger on the 6th fret, and that's 1 finger per fret technique, which is used a lot on the bass, not always, but it's kind of probably the most common way of fretting on a bass. So these exercises are boring, but they're pretty useful. You can check out the tab. By the way, my music stand's in my car ready for the next gig, so this is my music stand today. But for this, yeah, you just work your way up to the 12th fret, back down again, or, you know, whatever you want to do. If you want to just go to the 5th fret and back, do. But the point is you get really coordinated with your left and your right hands. Talking of that, I've got fretting hand finger permutations. So I just did 1 finger, 1, 2, then 3, then 4. What about doing, say, 3, 4, 1, 2? It's a little bit more taxing on that little finger, so it's great for that. So you can go through all those permutations. I would recommend using a metronome or a drum beat with this, but just because I'm speeding through, just to keep this video relatively short, I'm going to sort of speed through. But, you know, make sure your technique is really, really sound and the mechanics are completely down before you start building up any kind of speed. A couple more of those types of exercise where instead of going across a string, you go across the fretboard that way, so that you're string crossing and you're having to pivot your thumb at the back here just to reach some of these lower frets. Of course, yeah, this doesn't sound like music. I actually wrote a book of musical sounding exercises that are technique exercises that sound a bit like bass lines. I'll put that in the link below as well. That one's not free. So 2 strings across the neck, that's a really, really cool sort of way to play bass. You know, you can play loads of slidey stuff. That was just a scale, but this exercise is just sticking to that. That sort of idea of 1 finger per fret. So you got a few pages of that, and we move on to another pretty common way of playing the bass, which instead of playing 1 finger per fret, you kind of poke usually your first finger out a little bit. So instead of getting a 4 fret span, you get a 5 fret span. And this page here works on that. So you go up it's a whole tone scale, just getting used to the extra stretch that you have to do there. By the way, always keep your wrist straight, hold the bass so that the neck is pointing upwards a bit away from your chair, so that you're not having to bend your wrist, especially when you're moving to lower strings. Another exercise. Which is a C major scale in thirds, using that pattern, getting your fingers kind of moving in this extended fingering kind of way. So that's that. Then very simple notes on the fretboard, which there's a lesson that goes with that to find every single note on the fretboard, which is a kind of basic thing, but a lot of people don't know. Perhaps the notes like in the middle here, it can be a bit of a grey area. But that lesson there especially, which I'll link to here as well, That teaches you how to just work out all the notes on the bass really, really easily. You can play licks, scales, solos. You can just be going wherever you want, provided you understand the fretboard. It's a very patterned environment, this fretboard. So if you first play the bass, it might seem a bit confusing, but that will help you with that. Then I've got a harmonic note chart. So this shows you where the harmonic notes are. So harmonic is where you place your finger directly over a fret and you lightly touch it. So you don't press down into the fretboard as you would when you fret a note. You just lightly touch. So I've also got a lesson showing you some of these chord shapes as well, but it's handy to know the names of the harmonics, which are different in some cases to the fretted note below it. So that's a little confusing, but it's physics that I don't understand, so I'm not going to get into it. But if you know the notes and you want to, you want to be able to play a certain note, you know where it is. That's why I've done that. Then octave patterns. We got four octave patterns. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4? No, 5 patterns. And octaves are really, really useful in bass lines, but also to find a note. So you've got a G here. 2 and 2 across is 1 octave. If you go 12 frets that way, you get to the octave. If you go 3 frets that way, 3 strings down, I've got them all here. But if you understand those patterns, it really unlocks the fretboard by doing that, because you can very quickly locate where one note is in multiple locations. So very, very important that. This page is pretty cool. I've called it Theory in a Nutshell. Just one page explaining what a scale is, what a triad is, what an arpeggio is, and what chords are. I mean, if theory is a little bit of a blur to you, I really recommend you read this page. You've got a scale, you know, scales make up bass lines. From a scale you get a triad, it's the first, third and fifth note. And an arpeggio if you add the octave in, or the seventh. Very famous bass line that. Forget the name and the artist, but you might have heard it. So it's really important to understand scales, triads, arpeggios and their relationship. And then chords and how you can make those up. Chords are really fun on the bass and they're really useful to know, even though you're probably not going to be playing chords very often at all in a band or a recording situation. It's still good to know them. Anyway, that page is all of that, and there's a lesson there. Essential 1 octave scales. Major with a closed position, meaning it's a pattern that you can move around. So if you learn what the major shape right there, you can just shift it around in 12 different notes and you'll have 12 keys instantly. That's one of the great things about the bass, is that patterns are everywhere. So major, what comes from that is the major pentatonic. Minor, minor pentatonic. Now, obviously, you've got to bring these scales to life by making music, but this book, the whole point of this book, I do go into more depth in lessons about how to make bass lines, solos, fills up using these things, because there's no point learning any of this stuff if you're just knowing it because you want to know a scale. You've got to know what to do with it. But the first point is knowing it. I've even put a melodic minor and a harmonic minor scale, because that is something you'll hear a lot, especially in jazz, so you can have a look at that. Then I've got 1 octave major scale modes. Again, modes is something that a lot of bass players obsess about, and I personally love them. I use them a lot. I was extremely confused about modes growing up, didn't have a clue what they're all about. I've got a couple of lessons that might clear things up a bit, but this at least gives you a way to sort of work out the order of the modes within a scale. They're really, really incredibly important, and they're really fun. They open up doors to you being able to play lots of different music, create lots of different moods, so I really recommend you do that. What else have we got? Harmonizing the major scale. Well, I mean, there's a lesson on that using the QR code there, or I'll direct you to it through here. But this is possibly the most important thing in the whole book, especially if you want to learn to create bass lines. I told you earlier that a scale gives you a triad, and then if you add an extra note, you get an arpeggio. There are 7 different notes in a scale, and each of those 7 different notes has its own arpeggio, and that really is the basis of harmony in music. So you'll be able to create your own music, you'll be able to create your own bass lines by knowing this. So this is really, really important. You get your 7, I put 7th arpeggios in this particular book, but there are lots of different sort of voicings that you can use as well. But that's a really, I've been playing that for over 20 years, this exercise, and I still use it every day. And then the minor pentatonic, that's another one. Again, doing loads of recording and sort of rock, pop, blues, jazz, bass playing. The minor pentatonic and its relative major. I don't really go into that in this lesson. Although actually, no, I'm reading it here. I do. There's a lesson on relative major and minor. But the shapes across the entire neck of the minor pentatonic scale, let me remind you, that's just everything I was improvising there was using the shapes that you have here. And like I say, the first point is to know the shapes and to memorize them. You're not going to become a great bass player because you know them. Other things have to come into play, like knowing hammer-ons and pull-offs and things like that. And do subscribe to my channel, because I talk about, I've done lessons on articulations, and I talk a lot about not just having one aspect. It isn't all about groove or all about technique or all about timing. It's about the kind of interplay between all of those things, really. So that's sort of my philosophy. That's the way I kind of teach anyway. But the first thing often is to learn the shapes and the patterns, okay, which you can also link to your ear. We'll get onto that though. So all shapes together, that's right there. And then intervals. I was alluding to that just now, but I've got a lesson on intervals. Interval is just the distance between 2 notes. So if I have a scale and I go up 5 notes from the first note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bass players play root to 5 loads, octaves. And what you want to do is you want to get a particular shape on the fretboard and link it to an interval. So an octave. What have I put for that? Oh, have I done that there? Yeah. Some of them here, I've given you themes that you can work out. So the 5th. You learn the sound of an interval by linking it to a song. Somewhere Over the Rainbow as an octave. Or you just know your scale inside out. Be able to sort of hum it in your head. You can go 8 notes up is an octave. And after a while, you really get this. You're linking a shape to a sound, and then you can start to hear a bass line or hear an idea that you have and be able to play it. So interval cheat sheet, that's really important. Chords from C major. Like I said before, it is absolutely true that you're not really going to be playing chords that much, but you can certainly write music or come up with ideas that you can take to other band members, or use your digital audio workstation to write your own music. So I've done this in C major, and I've also done 7th chords. You can just mess around with that, really. Also, you don't have to play a chord, of course. You can know that if that's a C major 7th, all those notes. You can play these notes separate. If you know the chord, that's what a chord and an arpeggio is, by the way. An arpeggio is a chord, but just with the notes played separately. A chord is when the notes are played together. So that's pretty useful. It's one kind of voicing, one way to play that. One more thing you could do with that, which is a really good tip, is to play double stops. So we've got a dominant seventh, this shape here. So if I'm playing G and you see a G7 chord, you can just play the top two notes of that shape. A double stop is two notes. So really super useful there. Ah, yeah, harmonic chord charts. I was talking about that earlier. So harmonics are really, really good in endings, you know, so you can kind of work out what key you're in and learn a few of these shapes and stick them in endings. Not all the time. You use your ear and you do this when it seems appropriate. Right, we're nearly at the end here. I've tried not to ramble too much, but hopefully you're still with me. So this one, working on your groove and timing, perhaps the quality that other musicians will want in you more than anything. You know, you may be thinking, I need to get that double-handed tapping lick, or I need to know how to play these modes and everything. No one else really cares about that. They just want you to play solid, simple bass in time, with feel and with groove. That's what they want. So I've got 7 metronome exercises here to teach you to do that, or at least to start to do that. Playing in time and having great groove and feel are actually different things, but they're interlinked and they're related. And I think having a good understanding of the grid, of the beats, and internalizing those rhythms and working on your own inner clock is a really fantastic thing to do. So that's that. And then I keep saying the most important things, don't I? But the last few bits are practice tips. And really, if you go and download this, you'll have to print it. By the way, I'm not going to print it for you. If you go and download this, it's not going to really do anything for you unless you can work hard at it. So I really, really believe that the most important thing you can do is to develop a practice routine. Make it regular. It doesn't have to be very long. You could do 5 minutes a day, but if you do 5 minutes every day, you'll develop a practice habit, and then you can build on that. And if you do that, you'll get better. Your muscle memory will increase, and you will just get better by doing that. And I've got tips like that and a load of other 12 really useful practice tips, a really cool 11 principles of music practice that I wrote, and then some final words. So that is it. That's the book, my bass guitar resource book. And if you head to the link below, you can download that. Any other questions, just let me know in the descriptions below or get in contact. Thanks for watching.